Camp Atterbury, Indiana, May 7, 1945. The morning air hung thick with mist, clinging to the processing barracks where 73 German prisoners waited in silence. Captain Robert Morrison had examined 62 of them that day. Routine checks, predictable malnutrition, the standard aftermath of a collapsing empire. Then a boy stepped forward. He was slight, hollow-eyed, wearing a uniform that draped over his frame like cloth over wire. Morrison gestured toward the medical scale. The boy shuffled forward, bare feet pale against the metal platform. The needle swung, hesitated, then settled at 68 pounds. For a long moment, nobody moved. The boy was 15 years old. He should have weighed twice that. What the examination revealed in the hours that followed would haunt Captain Morrison for the rest of his life. Before we continue, if you're finding this story as powerful as we did researching it, please hit that like button and subscribe to stay with us for more untold stories from World War II. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. Your support helps us bring these forgotten voices back to life. Now, back to that spring morning in Indiana, when American doctors came face to face with the human cost of a war that had devoured an entire generation. Because what they discovered wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a window into the final, desperate months of the Third Reich, when children became soldiers and survival became the only victory left. And as Captain Morrison began his examination, writing down measurements that seemed impossible for a living human being, he realized something that would change how he understood the war entirely. This wasn't just one starving boy. This was what Germany had become. Act 1. The Boy from Berlin. Heinrich Becker turned 15 in March 1945, hidden in a Berlin bunker while Soviet artillery erased the world above. There was no celebration, just another day of survival long after childhood had ended. Conscripted in January during the desperate Volkssturm levies, he was swept into uniform with grandfathers and boys barely older than children. He received an oversized tunic, a Carabiner 98K with 5 rounds, and orders to defend positions already lost. Belief was irrelevant. Presence was required. He stood in trenches as Katyusha rockets tore frozen earth into mud, shrapnel, and bodies. His unit, a scattering of terrified civilians, held east of Berlin for 3 days before collapsing. Some fled west. Others died. Heinrich ran with 5 others through a landscape of fire and corpses. They ate rats, roots clawed from frozen soil, and once a dead horse. Hunger became a constant companion, hollowing him into a shape barely alive. When Americans captured them near Magdeburg in late April, he had lost 40 pounds he never had to spare. Processing was efficient. Papers, searches, transport. Heinrich moved like a ghost, conserving the little life left in him. He remembered the long journey Germany, France, then across the Atlantic only in fragments. Days blurred. K-rations sickened him. Sleep came in short, fearful intervals. Arriving in America felt unreal. Intact buildings, healthy people, cities untouched by war. Camp Atterbury, spread across Indiana farmland, housed thousands of German POWs by May 1945. Heinrich and 72 others arrived on a muddy spring morning, lined up for medical examination. He swayed in place, vision dimming, listening to others whisper fears about captivity. He had no energy left for fear. Captain Robert Morrison, experienced with malnourished POWs, stopped speaking when Heinrich stepped forward. The boy looked 12, his uniform hanging like fabric on a scarecrow. Every rib showed. His hands trembled uncontrollably. "Name?" Morrison asked. "Henrik Becker." "Age?" 15. Morrison doubted it. Henrik stepped onto the scale. 68 pounds. A boy his height should weigh at least 115. He was nearly half that. Morrison felt a chill. The exam confirmed the worst weak pulse, low blood pressure, paper-thin skin, loose hair, receding gums, edema, and a distended abdomen. Signs of advanced starvation, possibly organ failure. "This boy needs a hospital," Morrison told Major Harrison. "He's dying," Harrison agreed instantly. Through the interpreter, Morrison told Henrik, "We're taking you to the hospital." The boy frowned. "Why help enemy?" "Because you're dying," Morrison said, "and we don't let people die when we can prevent it." As Henrik was guided toward the ambulance, something shifted in the morning air. A reminder that victory is defined not just by strength, but by the mercy shown to the defeated. Act 2. The long road back. The base hospital sat in a cluster of white buildings near Camp Atterbury's center. Clean, overstaffed, and far removed from combat. Henrik was admitted to Ward 3, placed beside 2 healthy American soldiers whose minor injuries only emphasized how skeletal he appeared, like a boy pulled from a liberation newsreel. Dr. Sarah Chun reviewed Morrison's notes with growing alarm. 68 pounds, 15 years old, multi-system stress. She had treated starvation before, but rarely in someone still walking. She examined him thoroughly, ordered blood tests, chest x-rays, and neurological assessments. Over the next 72 hours, the results confirmed the obvious: profound protein energy malnutrition, severe vitamin deficits, deep anemia, liver and kidney impairment, and a heart beginning to consume itself. Clinically, Henrik was dying, sustained only by youth and stubborn endurance. Chan met with Morrison and senior staff. Saving him was possible but dangerous. Refeeding too quickly could kill him. They would have to rebuild him slowly, ounce by ounce. He began on diluted liquids and broths. His stomach immediately rejected them. His body had forgotten how to process food. Chun adjusted carefully until he could tolerate small amounts. For a week Henrik mostly slept, his body finally permitted to rest. He woke only to eat tiny portions or use the bathroom with help. Staff watched him with a mix of clinical focus and human concern. This was not an enemy. It was a starving child relearning how to live. Nurse Betty Morrison, 43, and the mother of 3, became his primary nurse. She treated him with practical compassion, speaking slow English, helping him eat, changing his bedding, sitting with him during long hours of silence. 10 days in, she found him crying. "Why you help me?" "I am enemy," he whispered. Betty answered simply, "Because you're 15. Because we can help. Because the war is over. You deserve a chance." He didn't understand every word, but he understood kindness. Weeks passed. His weight rose, 71, 75, 80. His organs stabilized, his hair thickened. His hands stopped trembling. Yet the psychological wounds surfaced. Nightmares, flinching at noises, hoarding food. Father Thomas O'Reilly, who spoke some German, visited often. He talked about life beyond war. One June afternoon he asked, "What do you want after this?" Henrik stared at his still thin hands. Berlin was gone. His parents unknown. "Maybe learn something," he said. "Something that builds. Medicine, farming, anything that helped instead of harmed. And so recovery became education. Betty brought English primers. Chun explained medical procedures. O'Reilly brought books that opened the world. By July, Henrik weighed 90 pounds, fragile, but no longer dying. Dr. Chun marked him stable. Morrison noted his transformation in clinical terms that failed to capture its meaning. Henrik felt relief, fear, gratitude, and enduring confusion over why strangers had fought so hard to save him. Act 3. What Mercy Builds. In August, 3 months after arriving at Camp Atterbury weighing 68 pounds, Henrik was transferred to the main prisoner compound. The hospital staff had become attached to him during his long recovery. This quiet German boy who had arrived dying and fought his way back to life through sheer stubborn will and American medical care. Betty gave him a parting gift, a small English-German dictionary. "So you can keep learning," she said. "So you can communicate when you go home." Henrik clutched the book like treasure. "Thank you," he said in careful English, "for everything. For saving my life." Betty hugged him briefly, maternal and matter-of-fact. "You saved your own life. You fought to survive. We just provided the conditions that made survival possible." But they both knew that wasn't entirely true. Without the decision to hospitalize him, to treat him as a patient rather than just another POW, Henrik would have died within weeks. The choice to save him had been deliberate, purposeful, a statement about what America would be in victory. The main camp felt overwhelming after the hospital's quiet routine. Hundreds of prisoners, structured schedules, work details. Henrik was assigned to light duty. His body still wasn't strong enough for agricultural labor. He helped in the camp library, organizing materials, assisting with English classes for other prisoners. He discovered something unexpected. The other prisoners looked at him with curiosity and respect. He was the boy who had weighed 68 pounds, the survivor who had been too starved to stand, but had somehow lived. His survival became a kind of legend within the camp, proof that even the worst circumstances could be endured. One evening, an older prisoner named Klaus approached him in the library. "You were in the hospital for 3 months, Klaus observed. "What was it like?" Henrik considered the question. "Like being human again," he said. "Like remembering that people could be kind without requiring anything in return." Klaus nodded slowly. "The Americans were good to you, then? Better than good? They saved my life when they had no reason to. Maybe that means something," Klaus said. "About who they are. About what happens after war's end." Henrik had been thinking about this constantly, wrestling with it during sleepless nights. The Americans could have let him die, could have provided minimal care and called it adequate. Instead, they had treated him as deserving full medical intervention, had invested resources and time in saving one enemy child. The message this sent was both powerful and uncomfortable. It suggested that Germany's propaganda about American cruelty had been lies. It suggested that enemies could choose mercy over vengeance. It suggested that defeat might not be the catastrophe German leadership had promised. In September, Major Harrison called Henrik to his office. Henrik went nervously, uncertain what the commandant wanted. Harrison gestured to a chair. "Sit down, son. You're not in trouble. Just want to talk." Henrik sat, hands folded carefully in his lap. Harrison consulted a file Henrik's medical records, thick with documentation. "You've been here 4 months. You've gained 27 pounds. Dr. Chun says you're going to make a full recovery." "Yes, sir." "I am grateful." Harrison leaned back in his chair. Here's the situation. Repatriation is being organized. You'll go back to Germany probably by December. The question is, what happens when you get there? Henrik had no answer. Germany was destroyed, a landscape of rubble and defeat. His family's fate was unknown. He was 15 years old with no skills, no resources, no clear path forward. "I don't know, sir," he admitted. "That's what I thought," Harrison said. "So here's what we're proposing. While you're here, while we're waiting for repatriation, we can help you prepare. More education, vocational training, whatever helps you survive when you go back." "Why?" Henrik asked. "Why help enemy prisoner?" Harrison's expression was patient. "Because you're 15 years old. Because you almost died. Because the war is over, and our job now isn't punishment. It's preparing people to rebuild what was destroyed. You understand?" Henrik understood intellectually, though emotionally the generosity still felt impossible. "Yes, sir, I understand. And yes, I want to learn. Want to be ready." "Good," Harrison said, making notes. "We'll set you up with intensive English classes. Basic vocational training. You have a preference? Something you want to learn?" "Medicine," Henrik said immediately. "I want to learn medicine. Help people like the doctors helped me." Harrison smiled slightly. "That's ambitious. But we can start with basic medical training. First aid, nursing fundamentals. Foundation for more education later." And so Henrik's captivity transformed into opportunity. He attended English classes daily, his language skills improving dramatically. He worked in the camp infirmary under Dr. Chun's supervision, learning basic procedures, understanding how bodies worked and how healing happened. He studied at night using books from the camp library, reading about anatomy and physiology and the science of keeping people alive. The other prisoners noticed his dedication. Some admired it, this determination to turn captivity into preparation for an uncertain future. Others resented it, viewed his cooperation as collaboration, as betraying some principle of remaining hostile, even in defeat. Klaus defended him during one heated discussion. "He's 15, Klaus said flatly. "He almost died. If the Americans want to teach him medicine, that's not collaboration. That's survival. He's learning from the enemy." Another prisoner objected. "The enemy saved his life," Klaus shot back. "Maybe we should be grateful they're kind enough to educate him, instead of just keeping him barely alive until they ship him home." The argument revealed the complicated politics of captivity. Some prisoners maintained rigid hostility toward their captors, preserving national pride through resistance even when resistance accomplished nothing. Others, like Henrik and Klaus, recognized that accepting American help wasn't weakness, but pragmatism, taking advantage of circumstances to prepare for futures that would require every skill they could acquire. October brought cooler weather and preparations for repatriation. After 5 months at Camp Atterbury, Henrik weighed 95 pounds and was finally stable. Dr. Chun declared him fit to return to Germany. Yet the psychological shift mattered more. He had arrived terrified, expecting punishment, but instead received care, education, and kindness that challenged everything he believed about enemies. One evening in the infirmary, he asked Dr. Chun why she had saved him. She replied, "Because that's what doctors do. Your nationality doesn't change that." When he protested Germany's crimes, she said, "You're 15. Wars end. We can choose hatred or choose to build something better." Henrik absorbed this. understanding for the first time the strategic dimension of mercy. "You think I can help rebuild?" "I think you have to," Chun said. "Your generation, the ones who survived this war, you're the ones who will determine what Germany becomes. If we send you home starved and bitter, you'll carry that bitterness forward. If we send you home healthy and educated, maybe you'll carry something else instead." The logic was profound and uncomfortable. Henrik realized that American kindness wasn't naive sentimentality. It was purposeful, strategic, designed to shape post-war outcomes. But that didn't make it less valuable. If anything, it made it more powerful. Mercy as policy rather than exception. December brought repatriation orders. Henrik was scheduled for transport mid-month, part of a group returning to the American occupation zone. His 6 months at Camp Atterbury had transformed him from dying child to healthy adolescent, with skills and education that would serve him in whatever came next. The hospital staff organized a quiet farewell. Nothing official. Regulations didn't permit celebrations for departing enemy prisoners, but Betty and Dr. Chun and several others gathered to say goodbye. Betty gave him another gift, a first aid manual in English with illustrations that transcended language barriers. "Study this," she said. "It'll help you help others." Dr. Chun provided letters of reference describing Henrik's character and work ethic, useful when seeking employment or education in occupied Germany, and a handwritten note that said simply, "You survived because you refused to give up. Keep refusing. The world needs people like you." Father O'Reilly blessed Henrik with a simple prayer for a meaningful future. Captain Morrison shook his hand. "You weighed 68 pounds when you arrived, 95 now. 27 pounds of American food and German stubbornness. Use both wisely." Henrik tried to answer but cried instead, gratitude overwhelming him. "Thank you," he managed. He left Camp Atterbury on December 10th, 1945, watching Indiana fields roll by, remembering how he'd arrived barely able to stand. 3 weeks later he reached Bremen, now rubble and reconstruction. British authorities processed him and sent him to a displaced persons camp. There he learned his parents had survived, his mother in Munich, his father still in screening, his sister with their mother. Their home was gone, but family remained. Henrik traveled south with his medical textbook, letters of reference, and the weight he'd regained through American care. His mother wept at the sight of him older, steadier, carrying himself with impossible confidence. "Where were you?" "An American prison camp," he said. "They saved my life. Taught me medicine." He finished school in occupied Germany, entered medical training in the 1950s, and became a doctor specializing in malnutrition. For decades he worked in refugee camps in poor regions, treating the kind of starvation he once survived. "American doctors saved me," he told a 1975 interviewer. "That shaped everything I've done since." He kept in touch with Dr. Chun, Betty Morrison, and Father O'Reilly for decades. When Henrik Becker died in 2003 at 73, his career reflected a single truth he carried from Camp Atterbury. Mercy can remake a life and inspire a lifetime of saving others.